We can't see, sir.
You can't see, okay. Chanakya,
Yes, sir.
what is impedance audiometry? What is the principle of impedance audiometry?
Pressure in the middle ear, sir. Stapedius
Pressure.
reflexes and then
What is the principle, main principle? How we will do the impedance audiometry and when we will do? What are the conditions when we will do the impedance audiometry?
it is used to assess the middle ear function, sir.
Middle ear function. Which function of the middle ear? Roll number 10. Roll number 10 is there. Roll number 10. Roll number 38. Roll number 38. 38. Roll number 24. Roll number 24. Chanakya,
Yes, sir.
what are the types of impedance audiograms? Types, various types will be there, na?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what are the various types, you know? Roll number 41, Alekya. Roll number 41. Roll number 41. Now, what is the principle of impedance audiometry? Last class it is over, audiology. So if you respond to the questions, then only I'll give the attendance. Okay, otherwise I'll mark absent. Even though if you are login, so if you respond to my questions, then only I'll give the attendance. Roll number 41. Roll number 24. Roll number 24. Please unmute your mic and talk. So I'm going to mark absent today. Roll number 38, 24, 41. Roll number 10. So all these roll numbers I'm going to give absent today because you are not responding. Roll number 41. Can you tell the impedance audiometry about impedance audiometry? Roll number 83. Roll number 83.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you tell the principle of impedance audiometry? When you will do the impedance audiometry, in which conditions you will advise the patient's impedance audiometry? Roll number 68.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, impedance audiometry. What is impedance audiometry principle? And what are the various types of the impedance audiograms?
It is an impedance audiometry is an objective test widely
Yeah.
used in clinical practice and particularly useful in children. It
Okay.
consists of tympanometry and acoustic reflex measurements.
Okay. What is the main principle in the impedance audiometry?
When a sound strikes tympanic membrane, some of the sound energy is absorbed while the rest is reflected.
What are the
Thus,
three parts of the impedance probe? So that is having the three channels, impedance probe. What are those three channels?
to deliver tone of
One is for to deliver the
to
sound.
deliver a tone of 220 hertz.
Second one.
To pick up the reflected sound from microphone.
Third one.
Second one is to pick up the reflected sound from microphone. To bring about changes in the air pressure in the ear canal from posterior to normal and then negative.
So that is to make pressure changes in the external artery canal. So what are the various types of impedance
Yes, sir.
audiograms? Various types, type A, type B. When you will see the type A? Type A.
Type A.
Have you opened your textbook?
No, sir.
Without seeing you are answering, or by seeing in the textbook?
No, sir. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, when you will see type A. Type A impedance audiogram. Don't know?
Don't know, sir.
Roll number 129. Roll number 129. Roll number 10, Ankush. Roll number 10. What is otosclerosis? Can anyone tell? Chanakya, you know what is otosclerosis? Chanakya.
Hello.
What is otosclerosis? You know?
The hearing loss because one of the
Yes, sir.
Malleus incus or stapes are unable to pass on the sound.
Unable to perform the sound. They perform the sound, ossicles.
Pass on the vibration, sir. Amplify the sound.
They will transmit the sound from external auditory canal to the inner ear. Transmission. Okay. Not one of the ossicles. Only stapes footplate. Okay. Not the malleus or incus. Only if there is stapes footplate is fixed into the oval window, then that is called the otosclerosis. Okay. So till now we have completed diseases of the middle ear. So this is a disease of bony labyrinth. Okay. So otosclerosis is just fixation or ankylosis of the footplate of stapes to the oval window. So that is otosclerosis. So if you see the inner ear, so there is membranous labyrinth and bony labyrinth. So in membranous labyrinth, there will be a endolymph. In between the membranous labyrinth and bony labyrinth, there is perilymph. So here the disease, the otosclerosis is a disease of bony labyrinth. So if you see in embryonic life in bony labyrinth, there will be 3 layers. So that is endosteal layer, enchondral layer, and the periosteal layer. So enchondral layer is nothing but the cartilage in the embryonic life will become into the bone by ossification. So there will be around 14 to 20 ossification centers in the bony labyrinth. So there is ossification of the cartilage that is present in the enchondral layer. So that is middle layer of the bony labyrinth. So it will become like a bone. Cartilage will become converted into the bone. That is ossification, enchondral layer. So in the otosclerosis, there is bony labyrinth showing the replacement of lamellar enchondral bone by irregularly laid new bone. So normal bone is replaced by the lamellar enchondral bone by irregularly laid new bone formation. So the new bone which is present or irregularly laid over the labyrinth is mostly spongy and more vascular compared to the normal bone in active stage or active disease. So that's why this is called the otospongiosis. So the density of the bone in active disease is like a spongy bone. That's why this is called the otospongiosis. So otosclerosis or otospongiosis both are same. So in otospongiosis, the density of the bone is less compared to the normal bone. But in inactive disease, so the bone which is formed in the otospongiosis is thicker and more cellular in inactive otosclerosis. So you need to remember inactive and active stage of the otosclerosis. In active stage, it is more cellular and less dense. So in inactive stage, it is more thicker and more dense compared to the normal bone. So it is a hereditary disease of the bony labyrinth, showing the replacement of lamellar enchondral bone by irregularly laid new bone. So that is the concept of the otosclerosis. So it was first described by the ankylosis of stapes by Antonio Valsalva in 1741. Then Adam Politzer coined the term otosclerosis. Siebenmann coined the term otospongiosis in 1912. So that is about the history of the otosclerosis. Then coming to the epidemiology. So in which people usually will do this kind of otosclerosis. So the exact etiology for otosclerosis is not known till now. So maybe it is autosomal dominant variation, and most commonly you'll see the white races and Indians. So the ratio between the female and male is 2:1. So the common age group of the otosclerosis is 20 to 40 years. So middle-aged women usually will see this otosclerosis. So there is one theory. There is influence of the hormonal influence on the development of the otosclerosis. So that's why it is most commonly seen in females. So that is estrogen and progesterone. There is a role of the estrogen and progesterone for the development of the otosclerosis. So that's why you'll see the amount of hearing loss. It will be more in the during pregnancy or menopause or after doing some stress, that is like trauma or surgery. So that is about the epidemiology of the otosclerosis. So the exact etiology is not known. So maybe viral infection or autosomal dominant variation or male to female ratio is, it is female to male is 2:1. So it is commonly seen in females, and common age group is middle age group. So there is a hormonal influence for the development of the otosclerosis. So this is one of the syndrome which is associated with the otosclerosis, that is Van der Haave syndrome. So if the otosclerosis is associated with the osteogenesis imperfecta, otosclerosis and blue sclera, so this triad of the symptoms, that is called it as Van der Haave syndrome. So otosclerosis, osteogenesis imperfecta and blue sclera. You can observe the blue sclera here. So in osteogenesis imperfecta, there is brittle bones. You will see the pathological fractures and otosclerosis. So then coming to the various types of the otosclerosis. So most common site for the otosclerotic focus is just anterior to the oval window, just 1 or 2 millimeters anterior to the oval window, that is called the fistula antifenestrum. So that is the most commonest type of the otosclerosis, and site of the otosclerosis, that is the stapedial type. So where stapes footplate will fix into the will attach to the oval window, that is the site for the development of the otosclerosis, that is the stapedial otosclerosis. Other types are the cochlear. So if the otosclerotic focus is seen over the round window or promontory, that is called the cochlear type of the otosclerosis. So in some people you will see the both types. So that is mixed type, both stapedial and cochlear. So the other type is histological. So in histological type, only on autopsies if you see the otosclerotic foci, so that doesn't have symptoms of the otosclerosis. So the main symptom of the otosclerosis is hearing loss. Because of the fixation of the stapes footplate into the oval window, there will not be any normal movement of the oscular chain whenever there is a sound wave strikes the oscular chain. So that's why they'll have the conductive type of hearing loss. So these are the various sites for the stapedial otosclerosis. Just now I told fistula antifenestrum, just anterior to the oval window. This is anterior to the oval window. This is the crura. This is anterior crura, posterior crura. This is the stapedius tendon, which is attached to the suprastructure of the stapes. Posterior focus, anterior focus, and circumferential. So this is anterior focus. This is posterior focus, just 1 millimeter posterior to the oval window. This is circumferential. So here you can see the otosclerosis all around the annulus. Around the annulus of the oval window, but central part is normal. So that is called the circumferential type of the otosclerosis. You have to remember various types of the stapedial otosclerosis. This is the commonest type of the all the types of otosclerosis, that is stapedial. So the other two types of the Biscuit type and the obliterative type. So in Biscuit type you will see the entire footplate is involved by the otosclerotic focus. So in inactive stage, this otosclerotic sclerotic focus will be more thicker than the normal bone, and the margin is free in the biscuit type. In obliterative type, so the entire involvement of the central part and peripheral part of the complete obliteration of the oval window by the otosclerotic foci. So these are the 5 types of the stapedial otosclerosis. Okay, fistula antifenestrum or anterior focus, posterior focus, circumferential, biscuit type, and the obliterative type. 5 types of the stapedial otosclerosis. So just now I told the symptom is deafness. So that is conductive type. Most commonly we will see the stapedial otosclerosis, and type of hearing loss is conductive type. So if it is cochlear type, that means the focus is present in the oval window or promontory, then you will see the sensory neural type of hearing loss. So in some people, if both the types are there, then you will see the mixed hearing loss. So that is the commonest presentation of the patients: unilateral or bilateral conductive hearing loss without any other history, like ear discharge or any blocking sensation in the ear. So the other symptoms are the tinnitus and vertigo. Very rarely will see the tinnitus and vertigo, but most commonly, rarely in cochlear type of the otosclerosis, you will see the tinnitus and vertigo. But most common symptom is conductive type of hearing loss. So one more symptom is paraactusis willis. So this is nothing but the patient with the otosclerosis is able to hear in noise, hear better in noisy surroundings compared to the calm surroundings. Because in noisy surroundings, the people who are talking, they will speak loudly. So that's why otosclerotic patient is able to hear better in noisy surroundings compared to the calm surroundings. So that is one of the important clinical symptom of the otosclerosis. That is called the paraactusis willis. So this is seen only in otosclerosis. So you have to remember, this is important symptom of the otosclerosis. So then coming to the signs. So if you examine the patient with headlight or otoscope or otoendoscope, you can see the clear normal tympanic membrane. You can see the cone of light in the anteroinferior quadrant, pearly white tympanic membrane, mobility of the tympanic membrane, everything you can see normal. So rarely, if the disease is in active stage, you can see the pinkish color over the promontory through the tympanic membrane. That is called the Schwartz sign or flamingo pink blush. So this is very rarely we'll see this Schwartz sign. If it is the otosclerotic foci is in active stage, that is more cellular and more vascular foci. So then you can see through the intact tympanic membrane, there is a pinkish blush over the promontory. That is called the Schwartz sign. So otherwise, most of the patients, if you do the otoscopy or otoendoscopy, the tympanic membrane will be perfectly normal. That is pearly white with cone of light in the anterior-inferior quadrant. So that is on clinical examination. If you do the tuning fork test, if it is a stapedial type, then you will see the pure conductive type of the hearing loss. Then Rennes test will be negative, and Weber's test will be lateralized to the poorer ear, and absolute bone conduction test will be normal. So in cochlear type, so there will be a sensory neural hearing loss. Rennes test is positive, and Weber's is lateralized to the better ear, and ABC is decreased. In mixed type also, mixed type means if there is a both types of the otosclerotic foci, then you can see the stapedial and cochlear type of the otosclerosis. Then you can see the mixed type of hearing loss. So in that case, Rennes test will be negative, Weber's test is lateralized to the better ear, and ABC is decreased because of sensory component. ABC will be decreased. Absolute bone conduction will be decreased. So there are 2 special tuning fork tests to know specifically we'll do in the otosclerotic patients. So these are the bone conduction tuning fork test. So these two are the Jelly's test and Bing test. So in Jelly's test, we'll vibrate the tuning fork and we'll place the base of the tuning fork over the mastoid process, and we'll compress the tragus inwards and outwards. So that means we'll occlude the external artery canal by compression of the tragus inwards. So that is Bing test. So in normal people or people with the sensory neural hearing loss, so there is decreased sound, decreased perception of the bone conduction. But in case of otosclerosis, there will not be any change if you compress the external artery canal or if you compress the tragus inwards into the external artery canal. So that is because of the fixation of the articular chain. So that is the Bing test. In Jelly's test also, here we will vibrate the tuning fork and we will place the base of the tuning fork over the mastoid process, and will increase the pressure in the external artery canal by Siegelization. That is, by using the pneumatic speculum, we will increase the pressure in the external artery canal. Then we will ask the patient whether they are able to hear the sound normally or decreased perception of the sound. So in normal people and sensory neural hearing loss, there will be decreased perception of the sound, because if we increase the sound pressure in the external artery canal, that uh, raised pressure will transmit through the tympanic membrane, through the articular chain, and then into the basilar membrane of the inner ear. Then there will not be any movement of the basilar membrane. Then that is because of the pressure changes in the inner ear. Then the patient will not be able to hear properly. That is decreased hearing. But in case of otosclerosis, there will not be any change in the Jelly's test. Bing test and Jelly's test, both are the bone conduction test. Both will place the vibrating tuning fork over the mastoid process. Then we'll ask the patient. In one test, we'll occlude the external artery canal. Then Bing test will compression and relaxation of the tragus into the external artery canal. There will not be any changes in the sound perception in otosclerosis, but decreased perception in the normal and sensory neural hearing loss. So the other investigation, audiological investigation, is pure tone audiometry. So all of you know about the pure tone audiometry. We'll give the single frequency sound stimulus to the patient. Then we'll ask the patient whether they are able to hear. So that is called the threshold of the patient. So in otosclerotic patients, there will be a conductive hearing loss because of the fixation of the foot plate. So this is the left ear pure tone audiometry graph. This is the bone conduction. This is the air conduction. So you can see the air bone gap. So air conduction thresholds are decreased. So if you are seeing the airborne gap, that means there is a conductive hearing loss. One important point here we need to see in pure tone audiometry. So there will be a dip at the 2000 Hz. 2000 Hz in bone conduction, not in the air conduction. Even though it is a conductive hearing loss, in bone conduction there will be a dip at the dip or maximum hearing loss in bone conduction at 2000 Hz. So that is called the Carhart's notch. So this is important 2 marks question for you. So this is seen in bone conduction, not in air conduction, at 2000 Hz. So the reason for this is because of the fixation of the stapes foot plate. So the proposed theories for the Carhart's notch is stapes fixation disrupts the normal articular resonance at 2000 Hz. That's why you'll see the more bone conduction loss at the 2000 Hz. That is the reason for the Carhart's notch in the otosclerosis. If you do the surgery for the otosclerosis, this notch will disappear. So speech audiometry, so speech perception, speech reception threshold, and speech discrimination score. So these will be decreased in the sensory neural hearing loss, but it is conductive hearing loss. The score will be achieved is almost, that is speech discrimination score is almost 100% in otosclerotic patients, and speech reception thresholds So that is intensity at which 50% of words are able to hear by the patient. So E is increased by the amount of conductive hearing loss. So that is if normal person is able to repeat the 50% of the words at 0 decibels, but in otosclerosis, if we increase the intensity, that means up to 30 or 40 decibels, if we increase the intensity, then the patient will be able to hear the 50% of the words. That is called the speech reception threshold. So usually it is around 30 to 40 decibels. So speech discrimination score and speech reception threshold. Discrimination score will be almost 100% in otosclerosis. So this is speech audiometry. So if we increase the intensity, so this is the intensity, this is the score. So in normal people, you can see the 100% score in normal 0 decibels. If we increase the intensity up to 40 decibels, here you can see again 100% speech discrimination score. So impedance audiometry. So this is one of the important audiological investigation to know whether ocular fixation is there or not. So usually we'll advise the impedance audiometry when the patient is having the conductive type of hearing loss with intact tympanic membrane. Then we'll advise this impedance audiometry so that you can know the various types of the middle ear pathologies. So in AS curve is seen in 40% of the patients with the otosclerosis. AS means stiffness. S means stiffness of the ocular system. So only in 40% we will see this AS type of impedance audiogram. So other cases we will see the A type. A type means we will see the peak at 0 mm of H2O. So if the pressure in the external artery canal is 0 mm of H2O, then you can see the peak pressure. So that is called the type A impedance audiogram. Usually you'll see the normal people, it is type A impedance audiogram. So if it is AS type, definitely that is because of the some ocular fixation. We can't say whether because of the otosclerosis. Sometimes there will be a congenital ocular fixation also. Those conditions also will see the AS type. So normal middle ear pressure and decreased middle ear compliance. So the pressure in the middle ear is normal in otosclerosis, but compliance of the tympanic membrane or mobility of the tympanic membrane is decreased because of the fixation of the foot plate into the oval window. And sapedial reflex is absent in otosclerosis. In normal people, it is present if we give the stimulus that is 70 to 100 decibels above the threshold of the patient. There is a contraction of the stapedius muscle which is attached to the stapes suprastructure. So that is called the stapedial reflex. That is absent in the otosclerotic patients and it is present in the normal people. So this is normal people and this is the otosclerotic patient. So the other investigation, radiological investigation is CT scan. You can advise the CT scan so that you can see the clear anatomy of the bony labyrinth, whether there is thickness of this oval window region. You can see the chalky plaques over the, you can see the thick focus in the, only in high resolution CT scans you can see this type of picture. In normal CT you cannot identify the otosclerotic focus. So if you advise the HRCT temporal bone, then you can see these kind of focus. If you are able to see the focus, this is the coronal scan of the mastoid. You can see in the oval window region there is thick, some bony thickness. So that means you should suspect there is a otosclerotic foci in the oval window region. So you cannot say only by doing the audiological investigations. If you do this CT scan of the temporal bone, then you can see this otosclerotic focus in high resolution CT scans. So in cochlear type of the otosclerosis, you can see the double ring sign or halo effect. So this is the cochlea. Around the cochlea, there will be a lucent area that is in the cellular active foci of the otosclerosis. You can see the lucent area around the cochlea. So that is seen in the cochlear type of the otosclerosis. That is called the double ring sign or halo effect. That is seen in the axial cuts of the HRCT temporal bone. So then coming to the differential diagnosis. What are the different various conditions which will cause the conductive type of hearing loss with intact tympanic membrane? So you need to differentiate from the otosclerosis by clinical examination or audiological examination or radiological examination. So these are the various conditions: conductive hearing loss with intact tympanic membrane. So in case of CSOM also we'll see the conductive hearing loss, but if you do the otoscopy, then you can see the clear perforation in the tympanic membrane. But these conditions will see the intact tympanic membrane, but conductive type of the hearing loss. So number one is otitis media with effusion. So this is nothing but serous otitis media or blue ear. So if there is a problem in the eustachian tooth, there will be accumulation of the fluid in the middle ear cavity. Then they'll have the conductive type of hearing loss. But you can differentiate from the otosclerosis by doing the impedance audiometry. Just now I told, if you do the impedance audiometry, the type B tympanogram will see in the if there is a fluid in the middle ear cavity, but it is AS type if there is a otosclerosis. Number two is adhesive otitis media. So in adhesive otitis media, if you do the pneumatic otoscopy, so that means if you increase the pressure in the external artery canal or by asking the patient to do the Valsalva maneuver, you can see the movement of the tympanic membrane. Movement of the tympanic membrane you can observe in the otosclerosis, but in adhesive otitis media, the tympanic membrane is very thin and it is totally adhered to the promontory. That's why you cannot see the movement of the tympanic membrane in adhesive otitis media. Third condition is tympanosclerosis. So the otosclerosis is different and tympanosclerosis is different. Tympanosclerosis is nothing but there is hyalinization and calcification of the middle fibrous layer of the tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane will have the three layers: outer epithelial, middle fibrous, and inner mucosal. So in middle layer there is hyalinization and calcification, so that you can see the chalky white patch over the tympanic membrane that you can see by simple otoscopy. So that you can differentiate between the tympanosclerosis from the otosclerosis, even though if the patient is having the conductive type of hearing loss. This tympanosclerotic foci, sometimes it will be present around the oscular chain. It will cause the it will impair the movement of the oscular chain mobility. So oscular discontinuity. Suppose if there is a discontinuity of the oscular chain because of the necrosis or dislocation of the incudostapedial joint also, these people will have the conductive type of hearing loss with intact tympanic membrane, but you can differentiate by doing the again impedance audiometry. So if there is fluid, you can see the B type. If there is a fixation, you can see the AS type. If there is a discontinuity, you can see the AD type. That means there is a free movement of the tympanic membrane if you do the impedance audiogram. Congenital oscular chain fixation and malleus head fixation also. These two conditions also will cause the conductive type of hearing loss because of the oscular chain immobility, but not because of the stapes foot plate. These conditions sometimes there is congenital entire oscular chain fixation, or sometimes only malleus head will be fixed in the attic region. So these conditions you cannot differentiate by doing the simple impedance audiometry or by doing the other radiological investigations, but you need to go for the intraoperatively. You can differentiate between these oscular chain mobility fixations, other oscular chain fixation, that is called the tympanotomy. That means you have to open the middle ear cavity, you have to check the mobility of the each ossicle separately. Then only you can know the whether malleus head is fixed or if there is problem in the stapes or problem in the incus. So these are the various conditions which will cause the conductive type of hearing loss with intact tympanic membrane. How we can differentiate from the otosclerosis? So the main treatment for otosclerosis is surgical treatment. You have to remove the otosclerotic foci, that is called this. You have to remove partial part of the stapes foot plate, and you can use the prosthesis to connect the incus and the oval window. So that is called the stapedectomy or stapedotomy. So stapedectomy means you have to remove the part of the foot plate of the stapes. In stapedotomy, we will make simple fenestration operation. We will make a hole in the foot plate of the stapes, then we will place the prosthesis. So inclusion criteria for surgery. When you will do the surgery, so all the patients with otosclerosis will not do the stapedectomy or stapedotomy. These are the criteria to do the surgery. So if there is a pure tone average between 30 to 60 decibels, so that is one of the important criteria. That means patient should have some amount of conductive hearing loss. Generally, patient also will go for the surgical treatment, and airborne gap at least more than 15 decibels. Speech discrimination score is more than 60%, and that means there will not be any. If the score is good, that means there will not be any sensory neural type of hearing loss, only conductive type of hearing loss, and absence of sensory neural deafness. So these are the criteria to do the stapedotomy. Inclusion criteria for doing the surgery. Contraindications for doing the surgery is only hearing ear. Suppose because of some other problem, the other ear is completely deaf ear, so then you should not go for the surgical treatment these patients, because there is a chance of the damage to the inner ear during the surgical treatment. If we damage the inner ear during the surgical treatment, then the patient will become the completely deaf, because already the other ear is deaf. So these patients you can give the hearing aids. The otosclerosis with associated with the Meniere's disease, otitis media, otitis externa, extremes of age in the childhood and in the old age people, and pregnancy, and those who are working in the high construction workers, frequent air travelers, those who are working in the noisy surroundings, and divers. So profession wise, these people are not advisable for going for the surgical treatment. So extremes of age, pregnancy, if there is a disease in the external artery canal or otitis media, that is in the middle ear disease. Meniere's disease is endolymphatic hydrops. There is a excessive pressure in the inner ear, so that is called the Meniere's disease. So next class will discuss in detail about the Meniere's disease, only hearing ear. So these are the contraindications for doing the surgical treatment of the otosclerosis. So then coming to the surgical steps for the stapedectomy. So this is normal tympanic membrane or otoendoscopy. So right here you can see the cone of light, anteroinferior quadrant. This is handle of the malleus. So right here tympanic membrane. If you place the patient in supine position, so this is posterior part, this is anterior part, this is inferior, this is superior. This is the lateral process of malleus, this is the handle of malleus, this is cone of light in the anteroinferior quadrant. So we are doing the surgery in the right ear. So first we will give the incision in the external artery canal, that is 6 to 7 millimeters lateral to the bony annulus or tympanic annulus, that is called the Rosen's incision. This is the incision side. So then you will elevate the external artery canal skin along with the intact tympanic membrane. This is important step. You should not damage the tympanic membrane during the elevation of this step, that is called the elevation of tympanomeatal flap. Permeatal incision or Rosen's incision, 6 to 7 millimeters lateral to the bony annulus, then elevation of the external artery canal skin along with the intact tympanic membrane. So after elevation of the this tympanomeatal flap, then you can see the oscular chain in the posterior superior part. This is the handle of the malleus, long process of the incus. This is the incudostapedial joint. This is the chorda tympani nerve. So most of the time, this bony overhang, the posterior superior bony part of the external artery canal, will obscure the view of the footplate of the stapes. So that's why you need to remove the part of the bony external artery canal in the posterior superior part, so that you can see the entire footplate area. Then you can proceed. So this is the next step. We will remove the part of the bony external artery canal by using the curette or by using the micro drill. So remove the part of the bone so that you can see the entire footplate area. Then you can make a stapedotomy. So bony overhang is curetted. So then you should separate the chorda tympani from the oscular chain. So the chorda tympani will pass through in between the long process of the incus and handle of the malleus. So you should separate. You should separate the chorda tympani. You should not damage the chorda tympani during the surgical treatment of the stapedectomy. So this is separation of the chorda tympani. This is. Then you need to check each ossicle separately, whether they are mobile or immobile. So first you need to touch with the blunt instrument, you need to touch the handle of the malleus, then long process of the incus, then make a movement of the oscular chain so that you can feel the movement of the oscular chain, then finally stepes. So that is to confirm whether which ossicle is fixed. So if you make a movement on the incudostepal joint, if the stapes is not moved, then you can go for this stapedectomy operation. That means you have confirmed the fixation of the footplate of the stapes into the oval window. So then you should measure the distance between the long process of the incus and the stapes footplate. So you need that is for the placement of the prosthesis. So you need to select the proper size of the prosthesis to connect between the oval window, that is footplate, and the long process of the incus. So then you should separate the incudostapedial joint. That is the first step. So before making the fenestration or hole into the footplate of the stapes, you should separate the incudostapedial joint. So without separating this incudostapedial joint, if you manipulate this area, there is a chance of dislocation of the incudostapedial joint, and also there is a chance of injury to the inner ear, that is labyrinth. So then after separating here you can observe the separation of the stapes from the long process of the incus. So then you will make a fenestra in the footplate of the stapes. So by using the micro drill, we will make a fenestration. Then posterior crus is fractured. So by using the micro drill or by simple pressure, you can separate this from the footplate of the stapes. This is the process most commonly we use the Teflon piston. So the length of the Teflon piston or process is distance between the medial surface of the incus to the stapes footplate plus 0.25 millimeters. This 0.25 millimeters extra should go into the this bony labyrinth, so that it will be there without any displacement of this process. So the normal range between the 3.75 to 4.25 millimeters piston placed after removal of the suprastructure. This is after placing the piston, then we'll cut the stapedius tendon, then we'll remove the suprastructure. So this is removal of the suprastructure. Then we'll crimp this process around the long process of the incus. So sometimes we will use the fat or fascia graft around the fenestration, around the stepidotomy region. So then we will replace the tympanometal flap into the external artery canal. So sometimes we will use the laser for making a stepidotomy. Laser also you can use to make a fenestration, micro drill or laser. Laser also you can use for the to vaporize the stapedius tendon and to remove the crura of the stapes, anterior crura and the posterior crura. So stapedectomy is nothing but will remove the part of the footplate. So part of the footplate will remove, then will cover the oval window area by graft, fascia graft, then we'll place the prosthesis between the long process of incus and the oval window region. Here definitely we should place the prosthesis. Nowadays we are doing the only stepidotomy, not the stapedectomy. So the disadvantage with the stapedectomy is there is a more chance of injury to the inner ear compared to the stepidotomy. If you injure the inner ear structures, the patient will develop the sensory neural hearing loss. So these are the various complications of the stapes surgery. During the surgery and post-operative. During the surgery, there is a floating footplate, submerged footplate, dislocation of the incus, perforation of the tympanic membrane during the elevation of the tympanomeatal flap, damage to the chorda tympani or facial nerve, persistent stapedial artery, and perilymph fistula or perilymph gus. So while making the fenestration in foot plate, there is a leakage of perilymph into the middle ear cavity, that is called the perilymph ooze or perilymph gus. So these are the during the surgery. There is floating foot plate, submerged foot plate, dislocation of the incus, perforation of the tympanic membrane. So post-operatively, there is a chance of infection in the middle ear, that is otitis media, oval window region, granulation formation, perilymph fistula, sensory neural hearing loss. If you injure the inner ear structure, this is very, very delicate surgery. You should not injure the any inner ear structures during making of the fenestration. Persistent airborne gap. If you use this short length, this process or inadequate crimping of the process between the process around the long process of the incus, then you will see the persistence of the conductive hearing loss, vestibular dysfunction, and delayed facial palsy in laser surgeries. So these are the late complications of this stapedial surgery, stapes surgery. So most of the time there is no role for the medical treatment in otosclerosis, but in active otosclerotic patients you can use the sodium chloride. So this sodium chloride acts by decreasing the bone resorption and increasing the bone formation and prevents enzymatic damage to the cochlea. So these are the different mechanisms of the action of the sodium chloride. So if the patient, if we are able to see the active focus through the tympanic membrane, there is role for the sodium chloride. Otherwise, there is no role for sodium chloride. That is medical treatment. The dose of sodium chloride is 20 mg orally twice or thrice a day for 3 to 6 months. So that is to convert the active focus into the inactive focus. That's all. There is no major role of the medical treatment. So in some patients, those who are unfit for surgery, those who are refusing the surgery, then you can go for the hearing aids. So because these patients will be benefited from the hearing aids, they are having the normal sensory mechanism, only conductive hearing loss will be there. If you give the hearing aids, they will be normal. So they will be able to hear. So that is, we need to counsel the patient before surgery. If they are willing for surgery, generally you can go for the surgical treatment. So in childhood or in extreme old age people, you can go for this type of amplification of the sound by using the hearing aids. So this is about the otosclerosis. Any doubts, students? Any doubts or questions? ఒకసారి రారా లాగౌట్ అయిపోయిందా చాణక్య
Yes, sir.
are you able to hear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any doubts regarding otosclerosis?
No, sir.
No doubts. Have you understood this chapter, otosclerosis?
Yes, sir. I should read one more time, sir.
Yeah, you have to read. So this is mainly disease of vascular chain, mainly foot plate of the stapes. So normally whenever sound wave strikes the vascular chain, there is movement of all the three ossicles. But here, because of fixation of the foot plate of the stapes into the oval window, there will not be any transmission of the sound waves from middle ear to the inner ear. That's why patient is having the conductive type of hearing loss. Okay, so there is a problem in the movement of the stapes, foot plate of the stapes. So that is the otosclerosis. Normal bone of the bony labyrinth is replaced by the otosclerotic foci. That is more dense bone. There will not be any movement of the vascular chain. Then they will have the conductive hearing loss. The main treatment is surgical treatment. The only symptom is hearing loss, that is conductive type. In sensory neural type, in cochlear otosclerosis, you can see sensory neural hearing loss. So on clinical examination, tympanic membrane will be normal. In active stage, you can see this Schwartz sign. The other investigations are the tuning fork test, audiological test, that is pure tone audiometry, impedance audiometry. Special tuning fork tests are the Bing test and Jellis test, only used in the otosclerosis to differentiate from the normal and sensory neural hearing loss patient from the otosclerotic patient. The other investigation is the CT scan of the temporal bone, CT mastoid, so that you can see the in high resolution CT you can see the otosclerotic. Okay, and also in CT scan the other uses are the you can see any other abnormalities like dehiscent facial nerve. So the horizontal part of the facial nerve will travel just above the oval window. So sometimes there is a bony canal dehiscence, congenital dehiscence of the horizontal part of the facial canal. So there will not be any bony covering over the horizontal part. Then the direct facial nerve will be exposed in the oval window region. In that case, you need to take more precaution to avoid the injury to the horizontal part of the facial. Okay, that is also you can see by preoperative CT scan. Any doubts? Any other students? Doubts? Roll number 68, 71. Roll number 10. Ankush. Okay.